Before I start today's video, I have to be honest. I hear my children engaging in the background, ha ha ha, having all the fun in life. And I go out and I say, hey friends, mommy's about to record a video. I need you all to be quiet and maybe go downstairs or go outside and play. But everyone continues to live their lives, and I'm like getting a little impatient and frustrated. So then a child comes into my room, starts to sit down, engages in conversation, and I'm trying to be patient. I'm thinking, hey, can you please remove yourself from my room so that I can record this video that I told you all about? Continues to engage in conversation with me. Then he asks this question, so what are you recording your video about? And I say, gentle parenting. And we laugh. We laugh because, yes, gentle parenting is something that I care about, and I'm still practicing it. But today's video is inspired by someone who spoke about gentle parenting, who's hot and popping right now in media. Her name is Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. Her content from the Breakfast Club interview is something I'm going to share with you all. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to share the actual video. It might get cut off, so you might hear me just share the quotes from the video. But today we're talking about gentle parenting. I'm inviting you all as my friends from the internet to go inner when we are responding or reviewing content, because that is my jam here. I consume content, but I want to do so in a mindful way. But it's all about cultivating the content of my character at the end of the day. And I hope that you all are also interested in doing so. So I chose Dr. Cheyenne Bryant because, one, she's hot and popping in the media right now. People are talking about her. People are having discussions about her. Some are leaning to the negative and some are leaning to the positive. When I first came across her content, she was on a show with Cam Newton, and they started to have some back and forth, and the internet responded to it. And I listened for myself, and I thought these are good conversation starters. These are good topics that we should start to expand in the community. But then when I seen her on other videos, I started to question even how I viewed the content. What I mean by this is sometimes when we find someone who's an advocate or someone we don't like completely, we either go and lean one way and say, oh, everything that they say is disqualified, or we lean the other way and we say everything that they say is qualified. I try my best with myself as well to make sure that I'm mindful and creative in my thinking process when it comes to consuming content, because everyone is figuring out, but everyone also presents themselves as if they have all the answers. I, my friends, am just on an exploration. So let's look at today's content from Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. I noticed 4 things that stood out to me when I was watching the interview on the Breakfast Club. One, I have notes. One, being on a conversation of transparency and boundaries. So Dr. Cheyenne Bryant is a therapist, I believe. So I think we're still trying to iron that out. But she was talking about her clients and saying their names. And I thought to myself, I wish my therapist would just go on the show and just start saying my name. It's something I said to her during my session. That doesn't seem proper. Is that okay? I want to know, if you're a therapist or you work in this field, is that okay? Are you just telling people business online or even making a note of it with their name? I think some of them she just said my clients, but she also mentioned Ray J's my client, and this is something he's going through. And I said, dang, Ray J, was you okay with that? So that was one of the things that stood out to me, and I responded to it because I try not to say, oh, everything someone says is true. I'm like, I wonder why that happened. The second thing that caught my attention was her definition of high value men being associated with the money they make. I don't subscribe to this definition of a high value man being associated with money. I think a man who makes a lot of money is a man that makes a lot of money. When we talk about the word value and we look at value, we are thinking about, okay, this laptop or this house has a lot of value because the things around it is what's making it valuable. The way the love and attention or the cost that went into this makes it valuable. Granted, that's understood. As it comes to people, I'm thinking about values. Like, what makes you valuable is the content of your character. There's a lot of things outside of ourselves that can change, but if you have the values within yourself, they should change as you move through different seasons and different experiences. So those were the first 2 things that stood out to me. But today I want to talk about the latter two, and that's gentle parenting and broken homes. So let's look at what Dr. Cheyenne Bryant said about gentle parenting, and then I'll come back and we're going to discuss it.
To see what I'm doing, to discipline me. So a lot of parents, to me, this gentle parenting is just called lazy parenting. That means I'm not in the mood to parent. I got things I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure my life out, or I'm a single parent. I'm trying to date, or I'm trying to get a sense of self. So I don't even have time or energy to deal with disciplining you. I think that's more of what it's about. And no, it does not work. These kids have no guidance. They're a very lost generation. I mean, I'm gonna go there. You look at the campaign this year. You know, all due respect to Sis Kamala, she threw a concert, and I like Meg, and I love Glorilla. She threw a concert with Meg and Glorilla, thinking that that was going to move and influence our community to vote for her. You think that we're that low functioning that you cannot talk politics to us and legislation to us for us to choose you based on leadership? That we're going to choose you based on who's dropping it like it's hot or who's bringing in a concert?
Here's what I want to pull out. I think two things are happening in this clip, and we're merging a lot of different experiences and thought processes together with gentle parenting. So gentle parenting has nothing to do, this is what I think about when people have statements. If someone says that they are Christian, or someone says that they love, or someone says they're practicing gentle parenting, we have to first understand what that definition is. What's happening in this experience is she's throwing in gentle parenting and just assume that it's lazy. From my understanding of gentle parenting, it takes more work. It takes more intention. It takes more patience, long suffering, kindness to operate as a gentle parent. To be able to practice self-control and say, oh, I'm not going to hit you or scream at you. That's not lazy. That takes a lot of inner work. But I can see how someone can assume that just calling it gentle parenting means one thing when it doesn't. So one thing I want to encourage people to do is to understand what people mean by their definition. When we talk about using the scriptures and we use the word gentleness, gentleness is actually a fruit of the spirit. Discipline is also what we're taught to use when we're training up a child. So those are two words that I want us to explore together today. What does gentleness mean? What does discipline mean? Because as I see it, we are speaking of the generation, and we're saying this generation is out of control. The scriptures might even refer to the generation being out of control. But my question would be, if we felt so strongly about how things were in the past, in what way did it get out of control? And who do we blame? And why is it that so many people who have practiced these concepts or principles of old are producing children who are traumatic, who do think that the way to best communicate is to hit instead of having a conversation? I always have this description of teaching my children on how to communicate. If I'm upset with someone at work, I can't go over there and try to spank them and hit them until they agree with me or they do what I want them to do. So if I'm training children to function in society, then that should be mirrored in the household. How do I have healthy conversations? How do I do this without harming you physically? If there is a scripture in the Bible that says you have to harm them physically, let's talk about it. But the only scripture that I see people pull out is spare the rod, spoil the child. The term rod is something that I want us to dig into today as well. So first, let's go into defining gentleness and discipline. I want you on your own, before we even bring up the definitions, what do you think gentleness means? And what do you think discipline means? So I'm going to add on the screen my process for defining gentleness. We look at the dictionary, which we're all using to define things and concepts. And I also wanted to see, where do we see these concepts defined, if defined in the Bible? Sometimes we just see the word, but how do we see it defined in the Bible? So let's start with gentleness. So gentleness is described as the quality of being kind, tender, or mild-mannered. So what are the characteristics of this? It's someone who has calmness, softness, consideration for others, avoiding harshness. There are a few scriptures that come to mind when I think about gentle parenting, like a soft answer turns away wrath, or being slow to anger. Those are things that digs into the fruit of the spirit, which we'll go into with where we see gentleness in the Bible. Discipline. How are we defining discipline by the dictionary? The practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience. To train or develop by instruction and exercise, especially in self-control. So the key words that come out with discipline is training, correction, self-control, and structure. So now let's look at the Bible and let's see what the Bible says when it comes to gentleness and discipline. So this first one is a fruit of the Spirit that reflects humility, kindness, and strength under control. It is often tied to meekness, which in the Bible is not weakness, but power exercised with love and restraint. This is where I think the world in itself mirrors all the things that we exercise on this earth. So we think that to have power over people and to tell them what to do or to control them is the best form of action, instead of maybe coupling this with kindness, consideration of others, and not letting your power go to your head. Because you're bigger, because you're stronger, you now think that you should have control over the next people who are going to grow up and have that same identity and repeat the same thing that's not helping us move forward. Not to say that I have all the answers, but it's something for us to consider, that this whole power grip is getting a little nasty. It's like, ew, what did you need to do all that for? How does it help everyone? It might help you for a little bit, but is this an addiction? Are you addicted to the power? Are you addicted to the suffering and the pain? Questions that I think about living here on earth. Okay, so the scriptures that we see gentleness displayed is in Galatians 5:22-33. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentle, and self-control. So although we are not seeing it defined in the Bible in this way, we see what's surrounded around gentleness. I would look at what's surrounded around gentleness. It's not saying beating or yelling or all these things. It's saying love, joy, self-control. This one is my favorite. Matthew 11:29 says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Woo! Oh. Learn from me. Let's continue. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. I don't know about y'all, but I learn best when someone is able to talk to me with rationale and logic and love and peace all together. Some say that those who are hard-headed, they need someone to yell at them. But what I understand about myself is, what are you yelling for? It's, what are you being disrespectful for? Why are you belittling someone? How do these things make whatever you're saying valid? How? You think because you are screaming or you're beating or you are showing your anger that that's the best way to communicate. The challenge and what takes less laziness is for you to find in yourself the patience, the long suffering, the self-control in order to realize you can choose a better way. You can choose. So this is one thing that I want to share with you all is the Bible has mirrored all of the things that we see. We can see, I guess, this idea of bad versus good, but we also see this idea of, if you want to choose this way, this is a choice. You can choose to be judgmental, or you can choose to be patient. You can choose to discipline or teach, and discipline means learning. Let's go to the definition of gentleness and what we find in the Bible. So in Proverbs 3:11-12, it says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves as the father the son he delights in. Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. And then 2 Timothy 1-7 says, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. So when we think about discipline, we hear in these scriptures that it could be painful. And I would assume that this painful doesn't actually mean that I got smacked. It might mean that it's something that I have to go through and it's something I have to go through, but I don't like it. Gentle parenting is not removing any of those type of experiences. There are plenty of times when I have to say no to my children, and that probably feels painful in their world. Yes, it's painful that you're not allowed to get on technology at this time. It's painful that because you did not listen, that this is the consequence. But does that pain have to be physical abuse? Does that have to be hitting? And I know people have their ideas. And I grew up with spanking being an idea of discipline. But I also had to admit that I didn't get spanked that much. And the things that I got, that I can count on my hand what I got my spankings for. If I did, I don't remember any of my other spankings. But the things that I got my spanking for weren't necessarily about me learning anything. Sometimes it was just about the pride of the parent. And I operated in that as well when I was younger in parenting and motherhood. And I decided that I didn't want to go this route. I had to figure out that when I was upset with my children, when I was, going off and yelling and things like that, that I was stressed out trying to survive America. And it seemed quicker and lazier to discipline them without any structure, without any patience, without any self-control. That's lazy. So gentle parenting, in my opinion, takes a lot of work. So to the use of laziness is something that I would question. I don't know about you all, but I understand people think that discipline and hitting will make it so that their children will grow up to be these like a doctor or be these great people. And who's to say that being in loving and kind and self-control and practice listening skills won't allow these children to be great leaders and not be those micromanagers that you have, not be that jerk at your job that you have because of the way that they were disciplined. Now, we want a good combination, right? We can't all lean and be, okay, and we can't be as strict. What I propose to us all is, how do we find that balance? Can you still operate in leadership and show compassion and teach? This is my favorite story, and I will tell this story probably every single day of my life. When we look at how Christ dealt with those who were judgmental, we see that he has someone near him who's considered a sinner, did something wrong, needs some discipline, needs some guidance and some structure, and people wanted to throw the stone at her. He first did what? He had a question. Some of this gentle parenting is about questions, having a conversation, understanding what it is that your child is doing and why they're doing it, right? So he presents the question, who's without sin, throw the first stone. So then everybody puts their stones down, boom, boom, bam. Then after that, he addresses the person who is with sin. So something went wrong, something needs to be disciplined, right? And he says, sin no more. So there's guidance and direction. It probably seems very like surface level, like sin no more, don't do it no more. But at the essence of the story, we see that he has a protection and compassion for someone who's doing something wrong. And he also has the patience to teach and guide them in the right direction. And that's what I see gentle parenting being, and being able to relate that to the Bible. So boom. So here's some other things that I want us to think about as we talk about gentle parenting and we expand this conversation is, where do we get the idea that disciplining our children was the only disciplining our children means that we had to hit them? Because you can discipline without hitting. Think about this. If you are a parent and you send your child to childcare and your childcare providers are hitting them all willy-nilly, you have a problem with that. Why do you have a problem with that? But you don't have a problem with you using the same hands that you love and nurture to also hurt and harm. That causes the confusion that we might have today. That some people think that someone hitting them also means that they love them. And so they will accept some type of abuse and couple it with this idea of love. But we look at love in 1 Corinthians 13, we don't see that. Okay? We don't see that. And I will explore it. So this is where I want us to explore when it comes to the scriptures that come out a lot when we're supporting spanking. So in Proverbs 13:24, it says, whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. And Proverbs 22:15, it says, folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far away. Proverbs 23:13-14 says, do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish them with a rod, they will not die. Punish them with a rod and save them from death. Now, this is a really good scripture because I'm quite aware that there are things where you are saving your child from situations where if you don't spark it in them to say, don't do this, that they will lead themselves to death. The interesting thing about this is we see that if you are nurturing a relationship with your child where they trust you and they trust your guidance, it might lead to the fact that they will listen to you and there won't be this resistance because you train them that way. You cultivated a healthy, sincere relationship where there's trust in your guidance. If all you think is hitting is going to be the answer, then once they get used to the hitting, they just do what they want to do. And the other thing that came out with Dr. Bryant, and I'm probably not going to be able to pull up the screen, so I'll just quote it on the screen here. One thing that she talked about was broken homes. Okay. She talked about broken homes, and I thought it was interesting because the two men that she had her interviews with before, I think a lot of people knew her name, they both came from seemingly good households. They so-called had pastors. I'm saying so-called because I really don't know. I just watch things on the internet. Some of this seems real, some of this seems fake. It's all entertainment. But for the idea, we understand that these two men had pastors as their fathers, and they could seemingly be these perfect households. Dr. Bryan is advocating for us to not have broken homes, but she also mentioned that these perfect households don't always breed the best children who are together. So when I think about this line that she says here, it's not about having a perfect household. It's about having a blended, balanced household that says, listen, this is what you can do. Get you this. Let me see if I could just play it because I might just have to just count the loss because I don't know what's happening. Let's just.
Like I was telling Ray J this. Ray J's my client as well.
Jesus.
And leave my boy alone. Leave Ray.
Yeah.
I was telling Ray, I said, Ray, I love your parents. But they showed you everything to do right.
Mm.
They didn't show you what not to do. And see, for me, I had a circumstance and environment that showed me everything not to do.
Right.
Mm.
So sometimes knowing what not to do saves you from doing the wrong shit.
Mm.
It's not about having a perfect household. It's about having a blended, balanced household that says, listen, this is what you can do to get you this. This is what you shouldn't do. And when you come from a lot of pastor kids and these folks are coming from these really perfect households or perfect marriages that have a lot of infidelity, a lot of brokenness in them, these folks, these kids learn how to master their life as well. And they learn how to overcompensate for what they're missing in broken houses, in womanizing or manizing ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes an issue. And then they just becomes a dysfunctional pattern where they keep creating this. They get comfortable in dysfunction and say, I'm thriving here. No, you're not. You've learned to survive.
Yeah.
And you're teaching everybody else who you are, creating or procreating how to survive.
You know, those. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to.
So, this moment here was interesting because Dr. Bryan is advocating for homes not to be broken. But then we go back to the two men in their homes were not broken, but they ended up choosing decisions that created so-called broken homes. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is how do we say that we want to have perfect homes that's based off of biblical principles? Those are for those who follow a faith, or just who want to have homes that are perfect, but then say that these same perfect homes breed dysfunctional outcomes. The word in here is causing me to be confused, and this could be on me. Maybe you all understand this, and I would love your impact in the comments, your feedback in the comments. But to me is we do want to have some type of foundation for a perfect home that's built on principles. But the issue is that we don't really understand the principles, and we're trying our best to perfect them. And so what happens is everyone in some way ends up broken, ends up on a route because they're trying to figure it out. And so a lot of these broken households don't always breed horrible outcomes for that person, right? So if we were to follow these principles that we think can move us forward and actually be intentional about perfect households, we might have to understand, what does it mean in the scriptures to train up a child in the way they go? She mentioned here, and I think this is a good call out, is a blend. But what does that blend mean? When you say blend, but you also say that these perfect households made bad outcomes. So what is it about a household that's perfect? Because perfect wouldn't breed bad outcomes. So it wasn't perfect. It was things that were misunderstood. So when we go back to the principles of being raised in a perfect households on biblical principles, and we go back to spare the rod, spoil the child, and we think that that interpretation means go ahead and hit them. But then we see these other areas in the Bible. So we choosing that, okay, this makes sense to me. But then the outcome is that we have this lost generation. So was there something wrong with those principles that we have to go back to acknowledge and review? That's what I think this time is for us. Then we're coming through a time right now where we just need to go review all the things that we thought was right and was wrong, and to consider something that's already been under the sun, but a new way. So if we haven't technically been practicing gentleness and long suffering and patience and kindness, what do we actually stop being lazy and go back to what that is? It takes a lot of work to be a parent in general, to be a parent surviving America, to be a parent of a broken home, trying to still be on that route. But everyone is figuring it out. The choices that we make together as a community all on earth is, hey, we've been negative, we've been harmful, we've been belittling, we've been doing all these things, and this is what we have. Look at America right now. This is what we have right now. What if we try something new in the same book? What if we've been overlooking these things because it takes too much work to do? But if we started to put that work in, we might have better outcomes. I don't know, because we can look at Ecclesiastes, almost anything, whatever way we could go might not even land us in the right position. But there is a way that's better. And my theory, y'all, is that practicing gentle parenting with an understanding of what gentle parenting means instead of making assumptions, and to practice discipline with an understanding of discipline being teaching. That rod, when we look at the rod broken out in that scripture, make that your homework if you really care. What does that rod represent, and how is rod described in other scriptures? When we look at rod, we see guidance, we see directions, we see a tool for teaching. It doesn't necessarily mean this wand that we chose to hit people. And for me, I think this topic it hits home because I think about the fact that slavery existed and people were hitting people in slavery. Like, they were abusing people and they thought that was okay. So there's a way that we think is right, but it's not right. And so if new information comes and it's challenged us to think something new, and the way that we've been operating is not working, try it out. Experience what it's like to be gentle and long suffering. And this is with anything. It's not like the first day, especially when you're undoing things, that you practice this and you see results. We're talking about a seed, and we talk about that seed growing and building and making a difference long term. So what that goes back to that patience. But when we see these children grow up and they operate in society as if they are nurturing and caring, but also have enough discipline and boundaries to know when something is right and when something is wrong, or something is, and if we don't want to put it in a bucket of right or wrong, what's helpful and what's not helpful for everyone as a whole. Before I close this video, I do want to share with you a few clips that are from some content creators that talk about gentle parenting. They are some of the most profound names and voices on the internet in the spaces that I've been in, and maybe there's some other people. But Destiny Ann is one of my favorites. She actually inspired me through her content to get this certification to be gentle parenting and teach others. It's expensive though, so if you can click on that thank you button and you feel like I could be helpful with gentle parenting, click on that thank you button, because I would love to do this certification and go out to different communities and perform workshops on gentle parenting, because one, being someone who, when I was younger, had to use the system in order to help me navigate parenting and to afford it, I realized that when I was looking around, a lot of people were just without guidance. So we had the discipline. So we talk about this rod and this teaching. One of the things that I understand about myself is that conversations and questions, it goes a long way. And sometimes we just make an assumption about what's right and what's wrong, or why people are doing things without considering where it came from. We live in this world right now where we're shifting a lot of blame. So we look at the outcome and we see, maybe someone who only receives political content through a Megan Stallion or a gorilla. But we don't understand what systems were in place before then, what brokenness was in place before then, what lack of wisdom and knowledge was in place before then that caused the output that we have. We all look at the output and say, oh, there's something wrong with them and they're ghetto and they're crazy and they're lazy. But they didn't come here to the earth and say, I want to be crazy lazy. Maybe it's something that we're all supposed to learn from one another in the situations that we've been put in. Because if I go back to the root and I try to go back to the beginning of things, none of us really chose our route. We didn't have enough to say, hey, I want to come in and I'm going to be someone who has a broken home, or I'm going to be someone who's able to even make a rationale about why people make choices. I don't know why I was able to think things through, and another person just blindly consumes content and doesn't see how it might impact them. We have our personal decisions, we have our personal choices, and that's a blessing. But at the very beginning, is this all an experiment for us to figure out how to love one another and to get from that brokenness to one whole being? Because when we consider that we're one whole being, we consider how this one part of the body that you want to discredit or dismantle is also a part of you. But if you have an output of, I care about this part of my body, I care about my temple in all aspects, then we're less likely to divide to this right wing or left wing and realize that we're all the same bird. I heard that before on somebody's comment. They say it's all the same bird. And they mention it in a way where it's like, oh, it's the same bird, it's both evil. I think about it in another way. Maybe that same bird just needs to operate as if they're one so that they care and we can fly. Let's fly. I know I said one of those people who's like, just kumbaya, but let's practice it. I don't know. All these other things are just not working as well as we think that they do. We have this assumption that it's working, but we look out and we're still complaining. We're still yelling. We're still mad. We're still dividing. We're still hitting. So is it working? Then the less kumbaya, the less of us practicing the fruit of the spirit, is it working? How? And if we practice these things, it really takes all of us being able to do so. But if all of us aren't able to do so, then we have to realize that maybe you should just try it. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm practicing. Like I said in the beginning, I am practicing because I had to be self-controlled when my children were like, but the thing is, they were living their life, they were happy, and I wanted to do something. And so it's not about them being these bad children. It's about the fact that they're celebrating, they're free, they're having a good time, they're not fighting with one another, they just rowdy, and I had something I wanted to do, and we're sharing the same space. So how do we communicate? How do we enhance our communication so that we can live in the same space together? And mommy can record her video and get thanks from the people so that I can get a certification in this and go and explore the world. Because this gentle parenting is something that it's about the children. I think the children is where we can start, but it's these same concepts of gentle parenting and relationship advice that we need to apply to these adults who never really got the nurture that they needed. So they grew up to be these children who didn't have any self-control, no gentleness and kindness, and then they became leaders, or they became in control of our healthcare system, or they became in control of our bodies. or they became in control of your taxes. They come in control of the decisions that make you stress out and not have enough and live in a poverty mindset that the only option you think you have is to hit, instead of freeing up the space so that we can think clearly and say, maybe there's a better way for us to come to the table that Christ threw over because of the injustice, and put that table back together, sit together and have a conversation about why we keep going back and forth. Because we're big kids now. We're maturing now. That's an option. I don't know. Maybe we don't, I can say this all day. I'm interested in saying it all day. I don't know if it will change. But words do have power. Our intent has power. Our choices have an impact. And I hope that one day someone hears something in a different way and they say, oh, I get it. Because I'm a product of hearing something in a different way and being like, oh, I get it. All right, so let's go into Destiny Ann. I want to share Destiny Ann and something that she shares about gentle parenting that I think is really good for those who have misconceptions about what it means to practice gentle parenting. Okay, Destiny Ann, let's bring you to the stage.
Does mommy say no sometimes?
Yes.
A little bit or a lot?
A lot.
Do you have to clean up after yourself?
Yes.
What is one of mommy's non-negotiable rules?
No hitting.
Okay. Do you have a bedtime?
Yes.
Is your bedtime the same time as your sister's?
No.
If you make a mistake, what does mommy ask you to say?
Sorry.
Oh, so cute, right? So cute. You're excited about life. Yes, Destiny Ann. Yes, Destiny Ann. I also want to share this other video that she shares at one of her most vulnerable moments, because we assume that gentle parenting is about neglecting ourselves, but we are all what? Figuring it out. Okay, we're figuring it out. We're figuring out how to do these things in a different way, because the old way that is, that they've been teaching us is not working. So you'll have to read what she's saying on the screen here, but practice your reading skills.
I am not the voices in my head. I am not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. 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 I am light.
All right, I like what she said here about it not being modeled, because this is what I'm starting to understand and recognize in this faith journey on my self-awareness experiences. Some things haven't been modeled, but at one point we have to realize that the old way didn't work as well. And so that's when questions come in. That's why there's an advocacy for these quality questions, because at one point in time, especially when I started out with this content about Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, the purpose was not to say Dr. Cheyenne Bryant is this bad person and she doesn't know what she's talking about. The purpose was to realize that there's moments in my consumption of content where if I initially like something, I might automatically just go on that side altogether, instead of recognizing that there are parts in here where we're all still figuring it out. And so I have to question it. I have to consider where there is a difference in opinion and still value that person and still see that person for who they are. This is what I urge us to practice, especially in this space of political disconnection, is people make decisions based off of fear or love. And sometimes we don't understand why they make the decisions, but it doesn't hurt having a conversation with them to try to figure out why they do the things that they do. And it doesn't hurt to practice these fruits of the spirits when you're having that conversation. Being slow to anger, using the soft tongue to turn away wrath. Those are principles that I choose to use in the Bible. And I was going to do a video about like how I pick and choose in the Bible, because there are moments and times when I see people who illustrate as if they are Christian. And I wonder what that means to them when they lead with judgment, or they lead with belittling, or they call people names. I say, I do see, one time when Christ calls somebody a name, but more times than others, I see him practicing that patience, quality question, critical thinking, And I also see him being an advocate for those who don't always get it right. And for someone who doesn't always get it right and trying to figure out this life and operate with the people in it that have very strong opinions, I am taking a creative route and I'm making it fun. But I'm also being intentional about what it could be if I tapped into this piece. And I think it takes work, but we have a lot of cleaning up to do. We have a lot of cleaning up to do before we get to the fun and play. But I happen to believe that we can do a mix of it. Make this a little lighter. Okay, let's look at this other content creator. He talks about spanking. He has another video. I could not find it. I remember when I first came across him, he was able to illustrate you spanking in a way that literally, I wish this is why I share content creators, because people just are able to communicate in such a poetic way and so profoundly. They do all the research and it just sounds like, that's what I wish I could say. So, but this is just 2 of the videos I think will be helpful for anyone.
I am tired of people telling me how to husband. If my wife disrespects me, then I will hit her. And that's fine. You don't have to hit your wife. That's completely your choice, right? But in my relationship, in my marriage, I hit to teach lessons, okay? And in my last relationship, I got hit with a broom. And I'm fine. I'm okay. So a little pow-pow never hurt anyone, all right? She needs to learn not to disrespect me. That's what people sound like when they work so hard to justify hitting children. Go to the comment section for a different approach.
All right. I do want to call out that one thing I'm trying to practice is when I'm communicating my stance or position, I want to practice delivering when I don't make someone feel dumb or stupid, because this is what I learned about myself. If you want to call me an idiot for how I navigate in this earth that no one really had the answer to when they came in, then I'm not going to be able to receive what you're saying. But if you do have some type of grace or mercy, and you are disciplined in guiding me to understand what it is that you believe is so true and right, I'm more apt to at least listen. And then there comes my option to practice critical thinking skills and to understand how does that apply, or does this match up to what my core belief systems are, which my framework right now is using the Bible. All right, now I'm going to go to, before I get to this last video, there's one other video I wanted to share, because this creator, hold on, it always goes so fast. So this creator is bringing out a really good example and giving us different ways to look at things, especially when we believe that this is the only answer. I know that there is a space for us to especially in the community of those who are on the darker end of the brown spectrum, where we are trying to navigate and live through earth and survive it, and then also make up for the mistakes that we made and the options that we didn't have the model, or the fact that the system was created to be against us. Like, you're going through all of these things. And so now you have to operate and communicate and be a parent for some of us.
I only spank at bedtime, and I let the kids know that if X happens, X amount of times, I'll spank. We are all too tired to be dealing. I can be wrong, but really just a tap helps. Okay, I'm not going to shame you because you admitted that it could possibly be wrong. I think there's some hope here. So I want you to look at what is making you tired and what can be eliminated. A lot of times as women, we are giving into certain societal pressures that cause us to be tired. And if we let those go, we'll live a much better life. I'll give you an example. My dad used to get on to me about my child's hair when I showed up in public places. I was a law school student. Okay, lots of pressure there already, but then I was working on the side and also trying to do volunteer work to keep up with my peers. It was just a lot. And when I let go of the pressure that if I show up to somewhere 6 or 7 o'clock, that my child's hair has to look like we just woke up in the morning, that made my life a whole lot better. So what societal pressures can you give up that are going to make you less tired? Number 2, say no to unpaid labor. A lot of times as women, we end up giving unpaid labor to our jobs, to our churches, to different places. Okay, if you start saying no to some of those things and putting that time back into your kids, you're not going to be exhausted for them. And lastly, is your partner pulling their weight? You have these kids with someone. If that someone still exists, is there a way they can be made to also pull their weight? Because the effects of spanking your child are long lasting, and the benefits that you get from those things I just named are nil. So eliminate those and preserve the safety of your child instead.
What do you think? What are your responses? Is it okay to consider that we can nurture the relationship between parent and child so that we don't have men who are suffering from their mama issues or their daddy issues, or women who are having daddy issues and mama issues? This really, all of these conversations that we're having online, it stems from us operating in parenthood without this creative lens of using other tools in order to move forward. But here's the kicker. A lot of us don't have the framework or didn't even know they had the question because this is all that we knew. And this is where I would hope that we would understand about each other is people don't have all the answers. We assume that they know and can do exactly what you may have been taught to do or you have had the privilege of understanding. But sometimes people need to have the experience in order to get through it, or they have to be in an environment, a community that sets them up for success. And unfortunately, some of the environments and systems that have been in place have not set us up for success. No matter how much we want to be delusional about it, it hasn't. The other part is we're individuals within the community. So the more that we complain about a community not doing the things that we want to do, the more we have to realize that we are an individual in the community that can start making changes and start vocalizing the things that will be helpful, or even the lack of understanding, or even that question of hey, why do you want to take education out? Why do you want to defund art? Why do you want to have it so that we have less understanding of our history so that we can make better decisions in our future? Tell me a little bit why, without yelling, without belittling. Tell me why. So these quality questions can be helpful. So I want to leave us with this last video from Mr. Chaz, who's given us a framework. I think that for those who are interested in the topic, this is the framework that we use. He does a little bit more sarcasm here. So, try to receive as much as you can, but listen to the message. I think that it's helpful here.
This is the most common reason why I've seen gentle parenting not work for people. A lot of people start gentle parenting saying, I want to do the opposite of how I was raised. But the problem with that is that you're actually applying the same school of thought to yourself in your parenting as your parents applied to you. Because if you had strict parents, they probably spent a lot of time telling you what not to do, as opposed to spending time teaching you what to do. And now as a parent, you're just thinking about what not to do, the parent you don't want to be, as opposed to the parent you do want to be and the strategies that you do want to use. So for example, you might have grown up in a house where you couldn't express what you thought or felt. But now as a parent, you decide, I'm going to let my child express how they think and feel all the time. But you don't teach them how to breathe. You don't teach them how to regulate. You don't teach them how to take accountability for their own feelings. You don't teach them how to set a boundary in a healthy way. And you don't teach them how to do perspective taking. And here's the kicker. Part of the reason we don't teach them these skills is because we don't have them ourselves, because no one taught us. They just told us not to talk back instead of teaching us how to talk back. That's why so many adults resort to aggression, passiveness, or passive aggression when they're trying to get their point across.
Hey, I never get aggressive when I'm trying to get my point across.
Thanks for the example.
No problem. But seriously, how do I make gentle parenting work for me?
It starts with teaching yourself and your family what to do, what to practice, what to learn, what to teach, what visuals to use to help your family be successful.
Well, that's pretty vague. I don't know if I can do this if you're not more specific.
So you're saying you're not sure that you could change your behavior unless someone is showing you exactly what to do instead.
Yeah, kind of like the kids.
Would you look at that? I'll actually make that my first point. Practice what you preach. So when we feel disrespected, or the world doesn't go our way, or someone says something that we don't like, we automatically get downshifted into the emotional state of our brain. When we shift down to the emotional state of our brain, we're only going to see the world as me versus you. And children will invite us down to an emotional state to have a power struggle because they're there too. Now, the difference between an adult being in an emotional state and the child being in an emotional state is that the part of the brain that is responsible for bringing yourself up in the brain and emotional regulation and perspective taking and all the skills we want children to use and responding and trying to get their point across, this part of the brain, that part of the brain is not fully developed till 25, 26. And a child needs an adult's help to move them up in the brain and to practice these skills so that they can use them repeatedly and successfully in the future. So if we want children to recognize when they're in an emotional state and to move themselves up to an executive state so they can respond in a healthy and effective way, then we have to practice that ourselves. And the way that you can do that is to pause, take a breath, recognize what you're feeling, say a mantra that is helpful for you, choose to see it differently and solve the problem in a different way. You can choose to see them as disrespectful, ungrateful, mean children, or you can choose to see it as they're trying to advocate for themselves with the best skills they have access to in this moment. And they just need help learning how to advocate for themselves in a healthier and more effective way. I'm about to show you 2 tools that you can get to teach yourself and your child how to self-regulate and how to teach your child to take accountability for their feelings. It's Managing Emotional Mayhem, the 5 Steps of Self-Regulation, and the Feeling Buddies from Conscious Discipline. And books can be very helpful when teaching children how to practice perspective taking. This book is about teaching children how to set and respect boundaries. And this conflict resolution mat can be very helpful for teaching children how to set and respect boundaries in a healthy and effective way.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. I think I have room for one more strategy before I get in an emotional state.
Q-tip.
Wow.
Q-tip. It stands for quit taking it personally. When you or a child to get triggered down into an emotional state and you're using your emotional state skills like blaming or excluding or back-talking or name-calling, it's not because you're a bad parent or they're a bad child. It's just how the brain works.
Wow. I really feel like that takes the shame off of me, and it takes the pressure off of me feeling like I have to shame my child.
That's right. And it frees you to focus on all the things that you can do to help your child learn the skills to be successful next time.
Wow. Thank you.
There's a lot that we can learn about the world from that last video. And although it's directed between parent and children, it transfers to our other relationships. That tip about Q-tip, that Q-tip tip. The Q-tip method, I think, is very helpful because I see places where we shame one another and we are identifying people to be bad. But one of the key words that I'm hearing is that we all need each other's help. And it's beautiful how the world works because a lot of us have different skills in different places. So it's almost as if we do have to operate as one. We cannot operate as 2 different wings. We have to realize where we meet a common thread, have better conversations, realize that we can't lead with shame, that shame might be a tactic that you may have learned from old, but there's some type of balance that we have to practice or at least try out when it comes to trying new solutions. If we've been doing the old thing and it has been working, what are some new tactics that we can at least try out and see what the results are? But I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. If this was helpful in any capacity, any of the videos I shared here, I'm thankful for those content creators sharing this video to help me. This is one reason why I think there's a blend between the internet community and getting out in earth and finding people to talk to and going to art museums and going to theater programs and going to comedy shows. Those are things that are important to me because we have a lot of content on the internet, but there's nothing like having a conversation in real life and experiencing people art in real life. So I encourage you, any of you who consider yourselves as my friends here with Dear Creator, is after you have this time here on the internet, make some time for you to go outside to experience life and have quality conversations. Until next time, hold on to you as much as you can. Hold on to your health, your well-being, and your mind. Be mindful. Bye.